Okay, so sometimes I like to revisit trades months after they happen because it's kind of fun, I guess. And so we're going to do that with the KD and Kyrie trades. The crazy thing when you look back on it is for this previous regular season, when you get to late November, when the Nets were finally just a regular basketball team again, we'll put it like that, things were going well. Like there was a 20 game stretch from like late November to early January where they were 18-2, I believe. And KD and Kyrie played in most of the games during that stretch. And I remember their switching defense was really effective. Like Claxton was getting all defense conversations. The team was way better with Jock Vaughn as opposed to Steve Nash. You had like Joe Harris and Seth Curry making shots. Royce O'Neal was just a consistent two-way guy. KD and Kyrie were making all the shots that those two make, of course. It was going well, right? And I mean, even with Ben Simmons, dealing with the back injury and just clearly not attacking the basket as often as you would want him to, their net rating with Ben, Kyrie, and KD on the court was still like a positive 8. And actually, speaking of Ben, because in a little bit I'm going to do some what if stuff, Ben ended up going down at about a little past the midway point of this previous regular season. So when I don't really bring him up in what ifs, just that's the reason. And then KD goes down. They have a small stretch where they, sputter a little bit. And then before we know it, KD is in Phoenix after Kyrie requests the trade and gets traded to Dallas. And, KD gets traded in the middle of the night and the whole spiel. And the big thing with the Kyrie stuff was that negotiations just weren't going well pretty much. Like the Nets were willing to offer an extension to Kyrie, but they wanted the exact terms that have been used by like Shams and the Athletic and stuff are guarantee stipulations. So it was probably like some games played stuff or whatever. And okay, the relationship with Kyrie in the front office probably wasn't that great anyway because, well, some things happened there. We'll just put it like that. And so Kyrie asks for a trade. He ends up in Dallas, the whole spiel. The thing that I wonder is what if none of that happened? Like, what if either Kyrie was like, okay, cool, I'll sign the extension that asks me to play a certain amount of basketball games, or whatever. Like, how far could the KD and Kyrie Nets have gone this previous season? And before I get into this, let me just say, I think the Nets ended up doing well. Mikal Bridges lighting the world on fire. They got a bunch of picks. Cam Johnson's good, all that stuff. And of course, there was also a lot of baggage there between the KD trade request in the offseason, wanting Steve Nash fired, that whole thing, and then just the most Kyrie Irving experience that you could possibly imagine. So I can't fault the Nets for eventually being like, all right, you know what, man, you want out here, fine. But just to play imaginary whatever for a second, I feel like they would have made a move to get a little better and add to what they had. And I believe that there were rumors that they wanted John Collins, which, okay, last year's version of John Collins, given that his hand exploded, not literally, but it's like swollen to hell, specifically his finger, to where his shooting fell off. I don't know if that would have changed their world, but John Collins is good and okay. But if they could have managed just one more guy, like could they have gone on some insane playoff run? Well, the one tough thing with that is, of course, we saw them lose in round one to the Celtics just a year prior. Granted, Celtics had a bit of an identity change in that time, going from Udoka hard-nosed defensive basketball, we'll figure it out on offense, to Mazzulla free-flowing three-point basketball until it gets tough, and then we revert back into we'll figure it out on half-court offense, leading to me losing my mind. But okay, because of that, you could just say, well, listen, we saw them in the playoffs with KD and Kyrie, and they shot a million long two-pointers, and the math basically was like, you're not winning this thing unless you make all these shots, pretty much. And even then, the physical switching Celtics defense definitely bothered KD more than you would expect in a playoff matchup for him, and also defensively, they kind of didn't have any answers for anything the Celtics were doing. And then also in that time, they went from Steve Nash to Jock Vaughn. They were definitely better with Jock Vaughn, right? As we now get back to this alternate reality of this previous season as opposed to the Celtics' loss of 2 playoffs ago now. Well, anyway, at the time of the deadline, the Nets were like 4th in the East or whatever it was, right? And so there is a world in which they could get like the Knicks or the Cavs in round one. Because you got to realize, KD was hurt at the deadline. And so if we want to keep that up as if, he's still on the Nets in this scenario, he's still missing games in the second half of the year. So I don't know if they go on some insane run throughout the second leg of the season, but eventually he would have been back. And also I know that Kyrie sat the last couple games of the season for the Mavericks and that whole thing that the Mavs got in trouble for. But in this alternate world, I'm just assuming Kyrie's playing and that's that. And so, like, do they beat the Cavs in round one with Kyrie and KD and the roster they had? Yeah, it's possible. Similarly, could they be in the Knicks? Sure. To be clear, I'm not guaranteeing they would have beaten either one of those teams, but we know what top-end talent means, and I think eventually you're running into the Heat, who, of course, their miracle run of Spo being a genius and Jimmy having various out-of-body experiences, and then Bam being super switchable, and Gabe Vincent occasionally being amazing, and Caleb Martin, the whole spiel, right? I mean, honestly, I don't know if anybody was beating that Heat team besides the Nuggets in that playoff run, But of course, along the way, you had the Bucks, Giannis missing games, and then you have the Celtics, and I've already mentioned their weirdness in clutch offense situations, and then you had the Sixers where, sometimes Harden was amazing in the playoffs, and sometimes he wasn't. Overall, you have the blah feeling coming out of those playoffs, and I do remember that Celtics series where Jalen was on him, and he was having a really tough time for a couple of those games. And then you had Joel's very weird, we'll put it like that, Game 7 in Boston. Like, was there a slight door open for a just crazy playoff run, KD and Kyrie? I mean, in retrospect, sure, if everything was going well and KD and Kyrie were at their best, yeah, they definitely would have made the Eastern Conference playoffs even more exciting than they already were. Perhaps that's me being too charitable, but it's just they looked really, really good in that 20-something game stretch when everything was going well until things were not going well. I guess if I could imagine what my predictions would have been if the Nets had made the playoffs, and gets really weird because I'm trying to imagine how their regular season would have gone, whatever. I think if they would have gotten the Cavs or the Knicks, I would have picked the Nets to win. And by the way, I had many wrong predictions in the playoffs, in the ones that actually happened, so take this for what you will. If they met the Celtics, I probably would have picked the Celtics. If they met the Heat, this most likely would have been in round 2. I imagine I would have picked the Nets in that series, and the Heat probably beat them just because they were going to beat anybody. It was what it seemed like. If they got Philly, I have to guess that I would have picked the Sixers off the idea of I don't know if they can guard Embiid. And then, in the actual time they did see each other, this, of course, after the KD and Kyrie trades, the Nets, through switching and doubling Embiid, they were able to throw a bit of a monkey wrench into the Sixers pick and roll offense. And then as for the Bucks, I mean, they lost to the Heat in round 1, so it's not even really worth thinking about that one to me. The real point I want to get at, though, is I think it's worth thinking about just what would have happened. I don't think it's fair to the Nets, even with the mess that the whole thing was, to just immediately dismiss them if they keep Kyrie and KD past the deadline. So, okay, for whatever all that means. Now if we can do the imagining game with the trades that actually happened. So diving into the whole thing, because remember when Kyrie made the trade request, me and everybody else on the internet, at least I think so, all believed he was going to the Lakers. And you can find this, Chris Haynes reported the Lakers offered the 2027 and 29 firsts, along with Westbrook's contract. It does not say, or at least I can't find, whether there were protections on those picks, so I'm not going to just say, oh yeah, 2 unprotected, I don't know, man. And of course other people have said this, if you're the Nets and you believe that trading Kyrie would lead to KD wanting out, then perhaps just getting more picks, even if they're very far out in the future. I mean, you got a 2029 one from the Mavs anyway. Would that have been better than getting 2 good players in Finney-Smith and Dinwiddie? I mean, I don't know. I guess it kind of depends on what you're flipping those guys for, how good Dallas is in 2029 compared to how good the Lakers will be in that time frame, and many, many things are going to happen in that time span, of course. As for the KD trade, I think my instant reaction to the KD trade kind of sucked, to be honest with you. I got Mikal Bridges' age wrong, and I kind of just undervalued the trade in general. And then I was like, wait a minute, they got 2 good players and then 5 picks, and I mean, there were already signs that Mikal Bridges was ascending to something, and just the ball handling reps he was handling for Phoenix when they had guys out, and the pull-up jumper cooking like crazy, and now 27 years old, bargain contract, big-time scorer. I mean, I don't know if he's going to average 27 for a whole season, but clearly dude can rack up points, of course, what he is on defense, and Cam Johnson's good as well. I guess part of me does wonder, what if the Suns, or the Nets, my bad, just sent out a call to the entire league. Guys, we're trading Kevin Durant by the deadline. I'm pretty sure this was the night before the deadline, because it happened at 1 in the morning or something. Hey guys, we're trading KD. Give us an offer within 12 hours or something. Would they have gotten something better, or was this the best they were going to get? I don't know. I mean, hell, maybe this is just me being too cynical for the Nets' sake, but maybe if they didn't do it immediately, the Suns would have had time to be wait, can we take a little bit off the table and still get Kevin Durant? I don't know. Maybe Matt Ishbia was just going to go balls to the wall no matter what on that one. If you want to do the imaginary game for the other teams involved here, I mean, for Dallas' sake, if they didn't trade for Kyrie, then their team would have been a team full of good players with Luka being asked to do too much on offense. And it is a really interesting thing to think about just from a team building standpoint, because it's they addressed a weakness, which was Luka having to do way too much on offense, but they created a very large problem for themselves, which was their defense, which had already slipped from the previous year when they made the conference finals, getting worse by being off of Finney-Smith and that sort of thing, right? Should be said, Kleba also did get hurt around that time, and he matters for their defense, but it's which problem would you rather have? Luka doesn't have a co-star, granted, a lot of that's because of the whole Jalen Brunson thing, and okay, fine. Or would you rather it be he's got a co-star and now we got to fix the rest of the team, which, Grant Williams, I've said I like that pickup a lot. And, Derek Lively, I think will one day be the type of center they're looking for. I just don't know if it's going to be right away. Josh Green's good on that side of the floor. Maybe Omax can be a day one defender as a rookie. Like, we'll see. There is also the fact that it's Kyrie as the co-star. And, for one, Kyrie, the injuries have happened in his career, man, between the knee and the shoulder stuff being the biggest things. But also, of course, well, let's just say that Kyrie is unpredictable. We'll put it like that. And then for Phoenix's sake, I feel like I remember something where they would have gotten John Collins. Like they basically had something on the table to get him before Kevin Durant fell from the sky for him. And sure, John Collins would have helped the Suns, no doubt. But you think about that team, like, CP and just how he looked in the playoffs, like that still happens in the scenario. Sure, D-Book can still go crazy. You can give Mikal Bridges more on-ball reps. You can have John Collins give him a little more juice as a downhill guy, but like we're still doing the DeAndre Ayton thing of how he feels in the offense versus what they want him to do in the offense and how aggressive he is and all that stuff. I think that Suns team, if they don't do the Kevin Durant trade, I think they end up having another flame out, whether it's round 2 or if they get like one of the better opponents in round 1. So yeah. But also in that reality where they don't do the KD trade, they've also got all their picks moving forward. They still have Bridges and Cams, so for whatever that all means, okay. Like, I do know there was a lot of pessimism around the Suns this offseason and them getting Beal and everything. Like, the Suns should be really, really good, man. Like, yeah, I think the Nuggets are still better if you force me to pick somebody. And the point guard situation's like a little weird with Beal and Booker balancing it out. But listen, KD, Book, Beal, and 3 awesome players usually equals good things on the basketball court. So yeah, is there anything else? I don't know. If I forgot some detail, my bad.